All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Today we want to talk about, in life, we all go about acquiring wealth, and we're going to talk about the different ways we're going to acquire the wealth. And the conversation we want to have today, and I'm actually going to start with a couple of witnesses. Being in real estate, obviously, I come across different kind of files, different situations with people. And I remember a gentleman that gave me my first job like almost 40 years ago. He got sick and passed away, and I was alerted about it. And come to find out, there was no will and no trust. So the wife and the kids, they had to go through probate, and it took us 2 years to get it resolved. It's interesting that the second witness, I had this class, I had a seminar on this about 5 months ago. And one of people I know, I invited him to the class, and I believe he showed up in there. And again, he was actually already going through some health issues at that time. And I said, come into this class so you can get some understanding. And what happens is that he came to the class, he got the information. It's like, okay, Gary, I need to take action on this. And what happened with most of us is we postpone things and say, I'll get it done. And unfortunately, he got very sick and passed away. And the same result, scrambling, trying to figure out what to do with the family. So this is a very dear subject to me for that reasons. The importance of setting up a living trust. Next slide, please. All right, so my name is Gary. Been doing real estate for like 15 years. Even though it's in 15 years, I've gone through probably 500 files, 500 transactions of dealing with families on different issues of real estate. And I have a knack for coming across, files that may be difficult from other people. But again, it's all about the perspective. So I am going to explore my experience, what I've picked up, and hopefully you guys will take something home with you. My co-presenter, next slide, is Fernando. Fernando, can you introduce yourself? You must be on mute, sir.
How about now? Perfect. Hey guys, this is Fernando with Homebridge Financial. I've been in the business approximately 26 years, and this is basically the only thing I've ever done since the day I graduated college. So I've been very lucky and fortunate to have fallen into this industry, and it has obviously treated me very well. I would highly recommend it to anybody. It's been a great ride so far over 2.5 decades. And yeah, that's pretty much my introduction, Gary, unless there's something I'm missing.
No, that's cool. We just went, Fernando deals on the financial aspect, which actually the conversation we're going to have today is about the financial aspect of life, more than real estate. But thank you for coming on. Next slide. So why should I consider a living trust? I think I started with a story about what happened to people when they didn't take time to plan, right? A lot of us I don't know, for whatever reason, people don't think death should come their way. But it is two things that's guaranteed in life. You're given on your birthday and on your death day. Those are two things that we all cannot.
It's three things, Gary.
Okay.
We're going to expire at some point, and we're going to pay taxes. Those two things we're never going to get around.
That's right. So, and once we go through life building wealth, and let's talk about how do we build wealth. Can you share what you know about how people build wealth?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, one of the, and I say this to my kids, I have two kids, both in college, so they're getting started in life. And the number one thing I tell them is, I started buying real estate, obviously, because I was in the industry here when I was approximately, I think my first property, 26 years old. And throughout the years, I've purchased and bought different, pieces of real estate. Some have been sold, but most of them I've kept them. And in a way, almost going blind, kind of not even just, it seemed like a good idea. It seemed like at the time, it also was a little bit scary and a little bit like, wow, this is a lot of money and blah, 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 X, Y, Z, a lot of repairs and different things. Being a landlord, obviously, with, never being a landlord in the past was obviously a new experience for me. But in the end, what I can say is if you can get started young and basically, do away with a little bit of the partying and think more about your future when you're younger in life, it's going to go a long way for you down the road and in the future. And that's basically what it's done for me. I mean, my life has changed completely because of that in terms of my security for my future. And if I wouldn't have made those moves, obviously my situation would be a lot different today.
Okay, so
yeah.
Thank you for sharing. What I want people to know is you build wealth in so many ways, right? Yes.
Yeah, and it's not just real estate. That's just one
Yeah,
side.
so
Yeah.
one of them is real estate. It's usually the biggest one for most people. But you also have people that do stocks, Bitcoin, whatever you're doing. There is savings account. There are wealth that we build up in merchandise that we acquire. A lot of people have a safety deposit box in a bank because they have some gold or diamonds that they want to keep safe, right? Because it's worth a lot of money. Anything that you build up that's that's valuable is where your wealth is coming from. And even I won't underestimate, people have money underneath their mattress. I've had clients that, in the process of maybe doing a transaction, they're like, oh, I have $25,000 I kept for my side money. Well, that's wealth. Every wealth that you have acquired over the years, so it's really important to take stock of that. And then why do we need a living trust to protect that? Well, number one, you want to avoid the government from dictating your assets, how it's going to be distributed and to whom it's going to go to, right? You want to reduce the chance of a family member fighting, and this happens a lot. Where for whatever reason, it could be, especially if you have a multi-family situation where you have other, wives and other children, it can really be messy because everybody feels they have a right, to that wealth. So, and the last thing we want to avoid is probate. Again, probate is going to be the government and the guidelines of the court determining where your wealth goes to. Next slide.
Well, I'll add one more there, Gary, and that is the biggest thing you guys don't realize or people don't realize in a living trust is, if we have kids, and especially kids that are younger, not, have not experienced a lot in life, don't know as much as, some of us who have been around longer, obviously, kids are kind of dopey. And like my living trust is set up in a way where if something were to happen to my wife and I together, the kids are just not going to all of a sudden inherit a bunch of stuff and go bananas or, not even know what to do, et cetera, et cetera. So we have parameters and things in place so that they're protected also from themselves. And, by having good people that we trust, basically in charge of things. So one thing to remember is that, if something were to happen to you, you have to look at your audience in a way and say, hey, are they mature enough? Are they old enough to handle this responsibility? Or do I need to set in parameters so that, I can make sure that things go smoothly in case I'm not around? So that's a very important piece, I think, part of this.
And that changes over years, over times, right?
Oh, yeah. We can amend any time as we go forward in life. Yeah.
Okay. So next slide. So the main thing is you want to avoid probate, because that's what we end up with when somebody would have passed away and they don't have any trust set up. We want to avoid probate. I'm going to tell you the reason why we want to avoid probate. Next slide. See, when you go into probate, now it's like you don't have any set guidelines. Sometimes, you have your spouse, sometimes you have a daughter or son that you trust to handle stuff, and sometimes it may be a friend that can properly distribute your wealth. But all of that goes out the window when you don't have a trust set up. And the truth is, a will is not enough. A will will still get you into probate. So a will will tell you, unless your will direct every asset you have, once something is missing in there, it's going to go to probate. So it's really important to set up this trust, because then the court will decide who will receive your assets. Creditors are encouraged to file a claim against your estate. Probate fees are set by law. And let me just give you an idea of that. I recently did a probate where the estate is worth about almost $1 million, 980 something. There's debt on the property that's in place. There's a $540,000 debt on that property, right? Refi and all that stuff, which is cool. But because the estate is worth 988, the court make decisions based on the gross value of the estate. They don't say, oh, your house, you owe $500,000. So even if you sell it for $900,000, you only really netting $400,000, right? No, they don't say that. They say your estate is worth $900,000. And then if you had anything else, car, jewelry, all of that stuff, they just add it to that. And based on that is what the fees are allocated to the lawyers and everybody else that's going to take a cut from the estate. So imagine, they're paying on $900,000 of the estate, when I actually did another one that there was only like $100,000 available, but the fees was set on the total gross of the estate. So that's one of the reasons why you want to avoid that. The probate fees, again, are set by the law and the gross value of your asset. And probate can take as long as 1 to 3 years. It can move fast if you have no challenges, but again, in a situation where people feel they're entitled to, sometimes in a probate, it could be somebody that's been taking care of that person, that the person intended to get their asset, but because there was no trust set up, some nephew that's neglected a person for the rest of for their life now comes in and say, oh, I'm a nephew. By right, I have a right to this money. So, and that's where dispute and litigations are very common, and it can drag it and drag it. We just got a clean bill from a court on a probate that was set up, and there was a will in this case, but it's taken us 3 years to get it cleared for the person that assigned to take their wealth to actually become the administrator of the estate. All right, next slide. So how do we avoid this probate? So I think you guys are getting it now, that probate is not something we want. It is something that happens because we don't have a structure in place. And a lot of people may even think, oh, I don't own a home, so I don't have wealth. That is so wrong. Because if you are someone that, you buy, these high-end purses, what are all these special people, Gucci, whatever, let's say you invest in all that, you don't have a home, but you have all these, $3,000, $5,000 purses, or you have jewelry that's worth 100,000, 200,000, sometimes $1 million, right? All of those are part of your assets. And that's why you need to, put into paper what you own and create a trust on it. So to avoid this probate, let's go to the next slide. It's really as simple as establishing a living trust, okay? So let's talk about what the living trust is. Next slide. According to Proposition 19, date of death is the date of transfer, right? Change of ownership must be reported within 150 days of that death. To qualify, children must make their parents' resident their own personal resident within 1 year and file an exemption paperwork. Now, this is kind of letting you know how once a trust is created, how you can take over a property that maybe your deceased parent have for you, and not get hit for top taxes. Okay, so children receive an adjusted property tax basis equal to the parents' basis plus no more than $1 million exemption, which is subtracted from the current fair market value. All right, we're gonna kind of go into detail about how this is done so you guys have a good understanding. Next slide. So, for example, if the house was purchased 10 years ago, at that time they purchased for $700,000. So that's the current, that's what the tax base is, what they purchased it for. Now, the fair market value at the date of death is 1.7 million, right? So, it's picked up $1 million in equity. This is why it's so important, to buying a home, because it just grows your wealth. I tell people, you buy a home, you don't do anything, your wealth starts growing underneath of you. So now, according to Proposition 19, maximum allowable is 1 million from the original value. So adjusted basis would be 700,000 plus 1 million, which is 1.7 million. Since the adjusted basis equal the fair market value of 1.7 on parent date of death, there is no property tax assessment. So even though the property is worth 1.7 million, your parents were paying, 700,000 on it. So long as you can occupy that property within a year and let the county assessor know that you don't pay any new taxes. Now, what if there's more equity picked up? Let's look at that scenario. Next slide. Okay. So in this case, again, the property was purchased for 700,000. Fair market value on the current date of death is now 2 million. Okay. So you have the 1 million exception plus the original 700,000. So in this case, they're going to pay taxes on 300,000. So even though the property is worth 2 million, because you take the exemption that they gave you of up to 1 million. So now you take over. Again, you still got to take over. If you don't take over, you automatically pay the full capital, full new value on taxes. So if you rent the place out, you automatically take over the new tax, and they'll be glad to send you that tax assessment right away, right? Any comments you will have on this, Fernando?
No, I mean, that's right on cue in terms of, the new rules that apply and stuff, as far as I know. I mean, I'm not fully, I would say, qualified as an expert there. I'm not a family attorney, but that's from what I know, yes.
Okay. All right, next slide. So how to set up a trust? So again, you see how in that kind of case where they had a $700,000 wealth, it can amass up to $2 million. I helped a couple who bought their house in PV about 30 6 years ago, and they paid $34,000 for it. And now we're looking at the value, to consider putting in the market, and that's worth $1.5 million, right? That's just how you build wealth, So I have to set up the trust. Let's go to the next slide on that. So our recommendation is to hire a professional. People are always reluctant to like, oh, I don't want to pay this. I don't, a professional will put it right for you. Okay. And even if you go through the second or third steps, I will say if you don't fully hire a lawyer to put it together, still go back to a lawyer to help you refine it, right? And that's what the second step is. If you say, no, I don't want to pay, $5,000 or $2,500, whatever an attorney is going to charge you for it, well, you can go to LegalZoom. To me, it's important that you get it done than not to do anything at all. So you go to LegalZoom and get that process started. And even if you say, oh, LegalZoom is going to cost me $600, just set up with something. Because honestly, I've helped someone, in the last minute, we couldn't get a lawyer, get into LegalZoom. I've helped them just go online and we create a setup of that trust just before that person expire. I hate to say that because, they let me know about it. I'm like, wow, do you have a trust? No, you do not? Oh my God. And I called some attorney we couldn't get. So I helped them like, okay, let's do this, the sign it, we get and it worked. Honestly, it worked for that person. It still saved them. Now, luckily, because they thought they were going to die on that operation that they were going into. Luckily, they came out of it and it didn't happen. So now they want to get an attorney to help them correct it. But what we've done, because we're getting notarized, was still, a very stable thing. Because I showed it to a title person and they said that was fine. So it's better to do something than not to do anything. If you get it done right, you're protected in so many ways. An attorney can see much further ahead than you can see. They can give you all the different analysis of, okay, who you're going to use, what conditions you want to put behind it, who's going to, be your administrator and all that stuff. All right, next slide. So we want to take a minute to talk about the type of trust you can establish. So number one is the living trust. Number two is a revocable trust, and then there's an irrevocable trust. Again, anyone you do, there's a whole lot of them, but these are the three primary ones that a lot of people do. And we just want to go through making sure people have understanding of what it takes for that. So living trust. So it's a legal document that places your assets, investment, bank accounts, real estate, vehicles, and valuable personal properties in trust for your benefit during your lifetime, and spells out where you like these things to go upon your death. It's really as simple as that. You got to put everything in there: your bank account, your business bank account, your personal bank account, savings account. Just mention everything in there. If you have jewelries, just mention, so long as you mention jewelries, I don't think you have to have the whole value of it. You mention the jewelries, they can assess it later on. A court assessor will assess all your stuff later on. But you just put all of this on a paper and say, okay, if something were to happen to me today, this is who I want to have control of it. And then you can put it in there, whoever you have to control it, and then you can put who you want to have to go to, your children, your friends. Some people have dealt in a trust where they assign it to their caregiver. I did a couple in LA. The husband passed away, the wife took over the trust, make an adjustment, and she set it up for the caregiver. So when she passed away and we got a death certificate, we look at the trust, and then I had a nephew that came back and say, hey, I that's my aunt. I'm supposed, but you haven't spoken to your aunt in 20 years. That's why your aunt, put it to the caregiver to do. I mean, I still kind of help him work it out something, so he got something out of it. But that's whom the lady desired, because that person, and the caregiver was another child in the neighborhood that just took care of them over the years, so whatever that person you want to be, you assign it to. Next one. So revocable trust is a legal document that places the grantor assets into a trust during his or her lifetime, and then distribute them to its heirs or beneficiaries after its death. The grantor can change or cancel the trust while he's still alive. This works a lot for single people. You just have people. That's why sometimes people in their trust, they'll give it to their dog or the estate of their dog or their pets, whatever that pet is. Or they give it to a foundation, a foundation they're connected with, and of course that can change from time to time because it's basically wherever their emotion is tied to, they can set it up and change it, right? And then the last big one is the irrevocable trust, right? This is one that cannot be modified, amended, or terminated without the permission of the grantor's beneficiary or beneficiaries. The grantor effectively transfer all ownership of assets into the trust and legally remove all of their ownership rights to the asset and the trust. So this is, sometimes when people have big estates, they have a school. I think I'm actually in a conversation on one right now with a private school that's belonged to the family, and the alumni put money into it, and they're like, no, we need to have a irrevocable trust because we don't want the owner to expire and then the kids come after it. And well, alumni put money into upgrading the school and all that stuff. So, this are kind of stuff. I mean, you have the special needs trust, you have all of that. It doesn't matter. Just find, again, you probably want to talk to an attorney to find which one to do and just set one up so that way, if anything were to happen, again, it goes where you want it to go. All right, next. All right, any questions, comments?
It's pretty much spot on.
Okay. All right, well,